Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School podcast. And look who's come crawling back. I have no idea how this podcast is going to go. I imagine like there's an analogy out there to like, someone that used to have like an authoritative, authoritarian, is that a word? Role. And then they've stepped out, but now they come back. It's like, how do you treat them? How do they treat you? I'm prepared for anything.
It's called a Berman, John. It's called a Berman. That's the technical term. And I am just a lesser Berman.
You're not a lesser. Listen, you're many things. A lesser Berman is not one of them. Shout out to Mark.
If any of us are Bermans, we are lesser Bermans. That's the way this works.
Fred Katz of the Athletic National. Okay, here we go. It's like the first time you introduce someone after they've written like a New York Times bestseller or won an Oscar. Now I get to introduce you as Fred Katz, national writer for the Athletic, national NBA writer for the Athletic. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm great. I'd be a lot better if I won an Oscar. That'd be amazing.
Do you
can
want
introduce
an Oscar?
Me as? I don't want to do the work it takes to win an Oscar. I'd love to win the Oscar. If someone just presented me with an Oscar, I'd be like Kramer running around with my Tony, like I'd be good with that.
Yeah. I wonder what category you would you win it for? A technical category? Would you be like a supporting actor? Are you like good behind the camera? I don't know.
I think the only way that it would happen is maybe I'd get like best adapted screenplay.
Yeah, sure.
For like a Thibs feature.
Oh my God,
that was that was adapted into a short film.
Forget
that would get there.
Forget the cat talk. We're going to spend the entire episode talking about actors who we think could do a good job playing Tom Thibodeau. If he was, who I'd want. I don't know. He doesn't quite have the look. But shit, who would have been great? This makes me sad. Gandolfini.
Oh, he'd be great in anything. But yes,
that makes me sad. Yeah,
I mean, I'd love to see just like Daniel Day-Lewis transform.
Gains 80 pounds.
I also think Russell Crowe would do a great Thibs. I could see Russell Crowe really doing a Thibs.
Yeah, no, sure, that works. Okay,
he has the gravelly undertone too, that authoritative voice. Like, have you seen The Nice Guys? Like Russell Crowe and The Nice Guys, like that vibe could get you a Thibs. Like he could get to Thibs with that.
Yeah, no, I could see. I could see him embodying Thibs. I don't know if I could get there with the face. But then again, there's no actor out there who really looks like Thibs. So it's but then again, if Colin Farrell can make up himself to look like Oswald Cobblepot, then transformations could happen. All right, we should talk about some basketball. So you were at media day today. You worked so tirelessly to get off the Knicks beat, and what did it get you? It gets you a spot Knicks media day. Congratulations on that one. I'm going to ask you a nice open-ended question. Tell me, what was it like today? What were the vibes? How was it?
The vibes at media day are very weird when nobody will answer questions about the biggest story at media day. I really wanted to, because for those who don't know, you go to media day and you want to ask about the biggest storylines, obviously. And clearly the biggest storyline is Karl-Anthony Towns. And yes, I leave the Knicks beat just so I can come back to be there on media day. Wrote a story on Karl-Anthony Towns last week. I'm probably going to write another Towns thing this week too. So I'm just like, I basically feel like I haven't changed. I'm talking to you, did a podcast on it. Feel like I haven't changed jobs at all. We go in there for media day. Yeah, I'm regressing. We go, I don't know what I'm regressing from, but I was going backwards already. Exactly. But so you go in there and you want to ask about stuff. And because of league rules, like people who are under management, like a Thibodeau, are not able to discuss trades that are on the burner, which aren't official yet. Which is so stupid, because if the Knicks hadn't made a trade for Karl-Anthony Towns, by the way, I would be able to ask about Karl-Anthony Towns. Like it's not like if the Knicks had not traded for Karl-Anthony Towns over the weekend, and I went in and I was like, Thibs, I'm just curious. I'm working in my new job. I'm working on a Karl-Anthony Towns story. I know you know him well. I'm curious how your relationship with him over the years progressed. And can you tell me about that and kind of how you guys recovered your relationship after you were done working together? He would be able to answer that. But because they're in this weird purgatory of the trade not being officially done, Thibs has got to be like, can't talk about that. Can't talk about that. So you have to get cute. So I really like, if I were really being a smart ass, I wanted to say like, okay, fine. You guys don't have Karl-Anthony Towns. Where are you at with Julius Randle extension negotiations? Like, I really would have loved to have done that. Unfortunately, that the 1 ounce of professionalism I still have prevented me from doing that. And I tried to find ways around it. The players technically are allowed to answer whatever they want because players can't tamper. So players, and they, some of them do and some of them don't. And Jalen at first didn't, and then kind of loosened up and talked about Dante and Julius a little bit. OG didn't talk about it. Josh Hart was just kind of open about it the whole time and playing coy, pretending like he didn't know they traded for Karl-Anthony Towns and just learned it and was talking about it. But it was a little bit, it's just like a weird experience because it's a rule that helps nobody and wastes everybody's time. Like, it's not like Thibs is like, oh yeah, this is a great rule. I got to do this. How about I have to answer questions on Karl-Anthony Towns twice? Like nobody wants this. So it's just so weird that it's like that way. The NBA has the weirdest quirks.
So given that you can't really tell much from anything today, I want to dig into so much, but I also don't want to keep you all night. And I want to get to your story.
That's what she said.
Christ. Again, didn't have far to fall, but somehow have managed to just go one rung lower on the old ladder. I was about to give you a compliment too, tell you how you did some new reporting in the story, which I want to get to. But first, I'm going to ask you this because I've loved many things. See, what am I doing? Why do I give you compliments? I've loved many things about our conversations over the years. My favorite thing, though, is when you are able to give some real good, genuine insight into the locker room and how this team really I don't say transformed, but you spoke pretty glowingly last year about how these guys liked each other. That was part of, their success and the whole thing. Obviously these new guys, Cat is not there yet. We haven't seen the locker room without the guys that have departed. Knowing the locker room as well as you do, how do you think it's going to change, if at all? Do you think it will suffer? Do you think that'll matter? Like, what is that angle of this trade going to do in your mind as best guess?
It will change because the people are different. So it's going to change, all the way down to the end of the roster. The people are different. There were guys at the end of the roster who had an effect on how they operated. There were guys at the end of the roster who had an effect on the culture. And the team, just from the people there, it's just very different people and very different personalities. Dante DiVincenzo was a huge part of their personality as a team. Isaiah Hartenstein was a huge part of their personality as a team. And it's changed. And I don't think that's really something that I can answer, to be honest, because a lot of the time you can't project that kind of stuff. It's pretty rare that you go into a season and you're like, oh, well, this locker room is going to be a disaster. Sure. It's pretty rare. Like, you have to have some pretty extreme guys. And it's pretty rare also that you can go into a season, say, with incredible confidence, oh, well, this locker room is going to be fantastic. One way that you can do that is if you just bring back the exact same crew that you had the year before. Sometimes also, like, places can go stale. Like, it could be great one year, and for whatever reason, it goes a little stale the next year or the year after that or whatever else. You can say it with confidence, but you can't be 100% certain. And you can put together a group that has professionals and hard workers and good guys, and for whatever reason, it could just not have that same sort of intangible effect, because not everybody who's a good guy becomes super, super close with everyone else who's a good guy, even if they're both good guys, even if they both have similar life priorities and are similar ages and whatever else. It just, there's an intangible effect to friendship that I think we can all, that should be the name of the pod. The intangible effect of friendship.
Only the pods with you, not with anybody else.
Yeah. No, I mean the name of the episode. That should be the name of the episode.
Oh, the name of the, yes, absolutely. That should 100%.
I'm giving a suggestion to Andrew. And it's just impossible to project those sorts of things. So I don't know, but I can tell you that it's going to be different because they're missing guys who were important to that culture that they built up last year and to their personality as a team. And they've added guys who are just different people. And I think the stuff that will stay consistent is they're going to play like a Thibs team, in that it's not going to be acceptable if you're not going out there and busting your ass every night. That's just not going to be acceptable, because that's not acceptable on a Thibs team. And quite frankly, it's not acceptable on the Jalen Brunson team either.
I was about to.
And that kind of stuff will continue. Josh Hart is not going to go out there and be like, you know what? I don't really care about rebounding anymore. That's not going to happen. But that's sort of it factor that we see that we saw them seed, that we saw them play with last year, which made them such a joy to watch and kind of made the sum of their parts so much larger than their whole. You just don't know if or how that's going to happen until you see it. And it may happen and may not. But we'll wait and see.
One more on this, just because I'm curious, and you're really good at this stuff. Is this a new challenge for Jalen Brunson? In that, like, he's grown so much in terms of his stature within the league, obviously, going from a bench player in Dallas to a bigger part of what they do to obviously everything that's happened since he came in New York. And now he has this opportunity to play with this guy who is, I don't know, was Karl-Anthony Towns one of the 10 most talented players to come into the league in the last decade? I think he's somewhere in that conversation. He's whatever. We could debate it, but he's in there. And it's unfair to say like Jalen Brunson has a chance to rehabilitate a guy who has made 2 All-NBA teams and 4 All-Star teams. But the way this trade has been talked about, I almost feel like that verbiage is not that far off. And again, having covered Jalen Brunson for a while now, how do you think he's going to handle this move? I almost want to say this responsibility. And do you think that's like unfair?
I think if you ask him, he will tell you that he approaches every single thing with the same way. That he's going to show up and he's going to study his film and he's going to go through his practice and he's going to lead through example, not necessarily as vocally. I think something that probably will work well, and I talked about this with John Krasinski, who's our Wolves beat writer at The Athletic, and is, in my opinion, I said this to him on my podcast, like, my opinion, John's the best beat writer in the industry. Like, he's just someone who is he's just better than all of us. Like, he's just amazing. And his insight on Towns and his personality is incredible. And I spoke with John about this on my pod, about kind of the types of leadership stuff.
Patreon.com. I should have said
that. Katz and Shoot. Thank you for that. Still happening, by the way. Still covering the Knicks twice a week. Patreon.com/Katz and Shoot. Check it out. Still doing a Knicks podcast, so you can check that out. But I had John on, and we were talking about Kat and the types of leadership that he tends to gravitate to. And so much was made of Kat's relationship with Tom Thibodeau when he was there, and by the end, now they just were not getting along by the end of Thibs' time in Minnesota. And they have talked about since well before this trade, as you've covered on the pod, about like how they're in a different place now than they were then. One thing, I said there's a lot you don't know about relationships. One thing I don't know, and I don't think they can know, is how much. I don't think they're lying. I don't think they're not in a good place. I think they probably are in a good place. However, I don't know how much of the reason that they're in a good place is because Thibs doesn't coach Towns anymore. And it's a lot easier to get along with Thibs when he's not your coach than he is when he is your coach. And the reason that you're not necessarily getting along with him is because of his coaching style. It's a lot easier. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But one thing that I think could grease the wheels a lot in that sort of relationship is that when Cat played for Thibs, Jimmy Butler was at the top of that locker room. And he has a very abrasive leadership style and a very aggressive leadership style. And when Jimmy Butler is there, he's going to do things Jimmy Butler's way, and it is going to be in your damn face. And Karl-Anthony Towns did not react well to that. And I think the whole league knows that. It's something that John talked about a lot. And he talked about when like Anthony Edwards came in. Anthony Edwards embraced Towns in a completely different way than Jimmy Butler did. Where Jimmy Butler was like, I'm the vet, you're the kid, you're doing it wrong, and I'm going to show you how it's done. This is how it's done. Whereas Anthony Edwards comes in, and Anthony Edwards is a star already, right? Like he's not a future star. He's just a star. And Anthony Edwards comes in, and I'm crediting this to John because this was his point. And he said, this is our team. We got to do this together. This is our thing. Like, I need you to be the best you can be. Like, let's do this together. And he embraced Towns in a much more, I don't want to say in a much, certainly in a totally unabrasive way, in an embracing sort of way. I think that's way more Jalen Brunson's leadership style. I think there are a lot of ways to be a great leader. And I think Jimmy Butler probably is a great leader for some people. He's also probably a terrible leader for other people. There are some people I know who have played with Jimmy Butler and they're like, I jump in front of a train for that dude. Like, that guy motivates me. He makes sure or there are some people who say like, you know what? I don't love him personally, but when I played with him, man, I worked harder than I've ever played. I was a better player than I ever was. And I appreciate him for that because he made me reach my pinnacle in a way that nobody else who I've been with have. People talk about Russell Westbrook like that too, in a very similar sort of way.
Oh, you know Russ very well. So
yeah. And there are other people who are like, I just can't take it. Yes, I just can't take it. And different leaders can be great and have opposing leadership styles. And I don't know if there are two leadership styles in the NBA that are more different than Jimmy Butler's and Jalen Brunson's, where Brunson is very much the quiet, this is how we do things here. I'm going to be the first one there. So you got to be too. And as long as you're showing up, it's all love. And if you're not showing up, it's going to be an arm around the shoulder and it's going to be, hey, what's wrong? Why haven't you been showing up? Like, what's going on here? Like, how can we fix this? It's not going to be, hey, kid, get with the program right now, or I'm going to slap you in the face. It's not going to be that. And I do think that experience will be very different for Towns than it was for Jimmy Butler. So that sort of variable with Towns and Thibs is like very much changed when the intermediary there is a completely opposite personality type.
I also want to believe that Josh Hart, being a somewhat outsized personality in the locker room, and his ability, like, I don't want to say he doesn't take Thibs seriously. He obviously but like clearly they had their own dynamic that has developed, and Josh could just say whatever the fuck, and Thibs doesn't seem to care as long as Josh Hart goes out.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't give a damn. So like maybe that'll help, where like Towns sees this other guy who's vitally important to the team, like being able to like, you know, be himself and like do what he's going to do, and it's not a big deal. I'm grasping for straws, but I guess I'm not worried about the Thibs relationship. Maybe that's naive of me, but I'm not worried as of right now. Or would you be worried if you were me?
I wouldn't say I'd be worried about it because, look, this was not a Cam Reddish situation. This was not a situation where like Thibs didn't want the Knicks to trade for Cam Reddish and didn't think Cam Reddish was a Thibs player. And then the Knicks traded for Cam Reddish. And it turned out not only was Cam Reddish not a Thibs player, he's not really an anyone player. Like it's not that situation.
Wait, hold on. You might have to say that again. I don't know if the aggregators had their recording.
That was mean. I wish I didn't say that. That didn't. That didn't sound mean in my head. That was mean.
Andrew, we're going to have to delete that from the...
No, don't delete
audio.
it. I said it. I should be accountable for it, but I'm sorry. That was mean. I don't like being
Fred,
mean like that.
I choose to take as little accountability as I can these days. So.
Why are we deleting?
That was Andrew's chugging champagne after
It'd
the
be
Mets.
funnier if it was like just vodka.
Listen,
Yeah.
It's not every day that your team makes the playoffs. I know you don't know what this is like, Fred.
I was about to say it is for Fred.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's not every day that your team makes the playoffs in dramatic fashion. So, what am I cutting? Let me know. I'm on a different. Okay, I'll let you guys get back to recording.
You're good.
All right. So Cam was not a Thibs
Andrew,
guy.
you should be like that. That was one of the most incredible. That was one of the best regular season baseball games of all time. That was so epic.
And it's the Braves. Like, to quantify it as a Knicks fan, I don't know who our boogeyman is. Whether like the Heat probably are the closest thing to it, but imagine if the 90s didn't happen, then you never beat the Heat, and then suddenly like the all the old ghosts and horrors. I hate to say it, Fred. The best comp is Yankees Red Sox. Like, the Mets never win this game. So,
Actually, I get that reference.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, congratulations.
You know what?
Thank you.
Upset of the podcast. I'm going to put us back on the rails right now. And
Look at
I'm
you.
going to
Great.
continue
Good
the
job by
basketball
you.
point that I was making. I think it's different. I think it's different with Thibs, because Thibs, it's not like Thibs didn't want to do this trade. Like, Thibs was in on this. Like, he
Can we be sure of
feels
that?
good. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Just making sure.
Yeah. It's not like Thibs was like, no.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
Thibs was in on it. Like, they would not have done this trade if Thibs felt like his relationship with Towns couldn't work. They would not have done this trade if Thibs said that he didn't think that he could fit in their system or anything like that. Like, I know that there were various conversations, like, progressively throughout the course of time, where it was like, can you make this work? And the impression that I've gotten is that Thibs is like, it's not even just like, yeah, I can make it work. It's like Thibs like excited about it. Like, Thibs won. He's excited to work with Towns. Like, he's excited to get him back. He thinks that he can really turn him into something. I'm really curious. I shouldn't say turn him into something, but he thinks it can be a different sort of experience. Sure. And also, like, let's not forget, Thibs went to Minnesota and then took that team to the playoffs for the first time in 9 million years. Like, we talk about Thibs' time in Minnesota.
They were the 3 seed for the entire year, the year they had Jimmy, until the last, like, 10 days of the season, when I think it was Butler got hurt, right? You remember this stuff as well as I do. And then they fell all the way to 8. But that team was good.
We talk about Thibs' run in Minnesota like it was some epic failure, when obviously it deteriorated quickly because of the Butler situation being the main thing. But, like, the Wolves didn't make the playoffs for 9 million years. I think they had the longest playoff drought of any team in American sports.
At the time,
Thibs went there. Yeah, at the time. Not in history, but at the time, they had the longest active one. And Thibs took them to the playoffs in their first year. They won 47 games. Like, he had success with Karl-Anthony Towns. And Towns had a really good year that year. He had success with Karl-Anthony Towns. He knows how to use him. He will figure things out. Something I'm really excited to see, and I don't know the answer to this. I asked Thibs about it today and didn't really get a real answer, in part because Thibs can't answer for sure on Towns, and in part because, like, Thibs just doesn't love to answer this stuff. I am so curious to know, and I don't know, but I'm so curious to know, does Thibs think Cat is best as a 4 or best as a 5? Are we going to see?
Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about it.
Well, don't they, given the roster, isn't it obvious that he has to have some belief that Towns is best as a 5? Is that not, am I overreading that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, there you go.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
No, that's fine.
I'm just saying, let's say everyone on the roster, hypothetically, it may never come to this, but let's say hypothetically everyone on the roster, including Mitchell Robinson, is 100% healthy. I think reasonable minds can make the argument that Mitchell Robinson should be the fifth starter and that Josh Hart should be the fifth starter. And that you go with a ginormous lineup with Mitchell Robinson as your rim protecting 5, Cat plays the 4, and they have a similar defensive dynamic to what happened in Minnesota. And then you have Anunoby and Bridges on the wing. Also a similar dynamic to Minnesota, by the way, where they had McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, who are just these massive wings who are excellent defensively on the outside. And then you have Brunson, who's kind of your Conley, who is, Conley's not this phenomenal guy on the ball anymore because he's aged, but he's incredibly smart. He's always in the right spot. He knows how to play. He's a great communicator, great team defense, all that kind of stuff. He's better than Brunson. But you can have that similar sort of setup. And where'd that take the Wolves last year? To by far the best defense in the NBA, by far. Mitchell Robinson's not as good as Rudy Gobert, but Cat had some moments last year where he was good defensively, where you could put him, say, on a ball dominant 5, and then you could use Rudy Gobert, or maybe in this case, Mitchell Robinson, as a help defender when that guy turns into him. You could do that against Embiid. You could do that against Jokic.
They did it against Jokic in that series.
They did it against Jokic in the playoffs, and it went great. By the way. That might be a better way to use him, especially because maybe if Josh Hart were a knockout 3-point shooter, the situation wouldn't be as difficult to figure out. But because guys aren't closing out on Josh Hart the 3-point arc anyway, maybe you veer more towards that direction. The other thing that you have to consider is that while the Knicks are almost as all in, if we made a who's the most all in rankings in the NBA, the Knicks wouldn't be number 1. Phoenix would be number 1.
Phoenix would be number 1.
But the Knicks would be in the top 5 of who's the most all in. They're pretty damn all in. They're not all the way in that. One thing they could do at the deadline is they could piece together Mitchell Robinson's salary. They could piece it with Precious Achiuwa's salary. They could send out 20, you put in a minimum guy there and you're sending out $22 million in salary. And you can get back. I'm not starting rumors here. I'm not saying they're going to trade for Clint Capella, but you can take back Clint Capella's salary on that. And I think how they evaluate what is best for Towns could dictate what sort of guy they go after at the deadline. Now, they don't have a ton of things that they can add. They could add Deuce McBride. They could add a 2026 and a 2030 pick swap. And look, one thing that we've learned in the last 72 hours is the Villanova guys are not untradeable. So maybe it's somebody else. Maybe if they really view the fifth starter as a really good rim protector, maybe it's just like Josh Hart and a pick swap for something. And that brings you back a $20 million player. I think we need to think out of the box, because how they deem Cat defensively, and Thibs will probably have the biggest say on that, how they deem is the best way to use Cat. And offensively, I think he's best if you can play him at the 5. Defensively, we'll see. I think there are guys also who we think of as possibly available now who are not going to be available, and vice versa. Like when the Knicks were calling around the league, it's not like they just locked in on Towns and traded for Towns. They were calling around the league and asking about centers all week after the Mitchell Robinson injury. They called Atlanta. And so that's why Capella's name comes to mind for me. But I don't think this is going to happen. I think the Pacers are going to be good this year. Don't think it's going to happen. But let's say for whatever reason, the Pacer season just totally derails. Miles Turner is on an expiring contract and he makes $20 million and he's a CAA client. And you don't have to sacrifice spacing with Miles Turner because he shoots threes. And if you could trade something to get Miles Turner because you deem Cat best at the 4 and you can still play 5 out, I don't know if the Knicks have enough to get Miles Turner, but maybe there's just some sort of move for you to make in that kind of scenario where, I just think it'll dictate how they go about the rest of the season. I don't know the answer to it, but I think it's really interesting.
In theory, part of Towns' value is his versatility, right? His ability to play the 5 and play the 4. And the offensive advantages don't would not seem to come as steadily if he is at the 4 as opposed to the 5. If you do pair him with, like, for instance, a Miles Turner, and you could keep the spacing the way it is, well, then all of a sudden maybe you're not really losing much. I think not the biggest problem, but the issue with getting Gobert was, like, Gobert was a guy who needed to play 35 minutes a night. You're paying him $40 million or whatever he's paid. He's going to be out there for much of the game. So it took away, I think, some of the Wolves' ability to activate that Towns versatility. The interesting thing about Mitchell Robinson is, at this point in his career, Mitchell Robinson is, I mean, what can you count on him as? You count him as a 20 to 25 minute a game guy. I mean, I know he's played upwards of 30 minutes, but he's a guy that if he only plays 20 minutes in a game or around there, then it's not the end of the world. And his money, his salary only dictates that, like, look, if he plays 20 minutes, okay, that's fine. I just think more from the health standpoint, it's like, I struggle, and this is I'll ask you, like, if you're a team that has designs on winning the championship, what the Knicks obviously do, is there a baseline where if your injury concerns over a player fall below the baseline and the player is making a significant amount of money, which Mitch Robinson certainly is, and he's their last ostensibly tradable piece, although I understand what you're saying about Josh Hart and everything, like, do you almost need to consider things that you would otherwise not consider? And that's probably my biggest question now, is like, what do the Knicks internally, how do they value Mr. Robinson? Do they value as, like, we got to see what we could get for this salary slot and make a better use of it, or we're going to bide our time and we're going to, give him a run with Towns? Like, where would you fall on that?
I think the answer to that question lies in how the rest of the league values Mitchell Robinson, which right now I don't think is very high, because I think the rest of the league has a similar opinion on him to, like, the Knicks fan base, which is, yeah, Mitch Robinson's healthy. That's a damn good player, but he's not proving to be healthy. I mean, the injuries just keep piling up, and it's not even that the injuries keep piling up. It's that the timelines keep extending, right? And he's going to go more than a year without looking like the dominant Mitchell Robinson. Because when he came back last year, he didn't look like himself. And he's going to go now more than a year without looking like the dominant Mitchell Robinson. And I don't think teams are going to want to give up very much for that. But his salary slot, if you pair it with a pick swap, if you pair it with another good player, can help you get somewhere. And I don't know where that's going to be. I think the Knicks are very open to that. I think if the Knicks got a good offer to Mitchell Robinson, like, they're engaging. They're going to talk to you if they get a good offer. I just don't really know what those offers are right now, because I think everybody else is just as skeptical. Like, I don't think you're going to find anyone other than Mitchell Robinson himself who's not skeptical about his health moving forward. And even if I told you, like, Mitchell Robinson will definitely be back by January 1st, and he's going to be in good shape, you'd still be like, okay, but, like, is there going to be another injury that follows? Something that I think should be concerning is that, it's been reported by, everybody that December or January is the target for his return. But when I was told the target for his return, the reason that it's being reported that way is it's being responsibly reported that way. The reason it's being reported that way is, like, I was told when the target for his return is December or January, but I was told, like, write it like we're targeting his return December or January. Don't write like he's returning, or don't write like the Knicks expect him back December or January, because it might not be December or January. What happens is we're targeting December or January, but we're not going to rush him. And we're going to monitor his body, and we're going to monitor the rehab process. And if he needs more time, he needs more time. And that's the way it's going to work. And so that's how it was expressed to me. And so my reaction to that is, like, okay, maybe it's not going to be December or January. That makes me think, like, there's obviously a chance that it's not going to be that. And if that's the case, I don't think you can responsibly. Now we're talking about the possibility of, like, his return pushing up against the trade deadline, going past it. Who knows? Like, you can't responsibly rely on getting production out of his spot this season. Like, you just you just can't. You need some sort of like actual actionable plan B. And you don't need it today, but they just traded for Towns. That's a pretty damn good plan B. But you might need it by the deadline.
There is not another contending team in the league or a team that has designs on winning the championship this year that has 8 figures tied up in a player who is uncertain to play in this calendar year. Other than Kristaps Porzingis, and the Celtics just proved during the playoffs that they can do just fine if they don't have KP, and I don't think anybody has any worries about them. Maybe people shouldn't have worries about the Knicks. Maybe they're solid enough, and it's just like, all right, well, whatever. We'll wait until he gets back. But I'm with you. And as you said, it depends on what the offers are. There's a couple more, and I promise I am going to get you out of here. Did anything about the trade shock you?
I mean, that had happened surprised me.
Surprised you?
Yeah, like I didn't think this was happening. It came together really quickly. You know, I was on the phone with people on Friday, and I was told like, just like keep an eye on it, but there wasn't much optimism that it was actually going to happen because the Knicks have called about Towns so many times over the years.
Can we talk about your story?
Sure, we can talk about my story.
So you open your story. Everybody go subscribe to the Athletic just to read Fred Katz, but there's other people I think that do writing on there too. And you make it very clear through some very specific anecdotes. I don't want to spoil it because I want people to go read it. But like the Knicks have like talked about like potential packages over the years. Like, but you make it so abundantly clear that they have targeted Towns for a while. And that they have had his name circled for a while, and now it just happened. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is like what do you think changed? But continue. I cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, I had a line in that story originally, which I was upset it got cut. Honestly, I'll air my grievances publicly because it was one of my more autobiographical lines. But I compared them to the 6th grader who will pass flirtatious notes desk to desk when the teacher is turned around, but will never actually ask the girl on a date to the dance. And that was what they were like with Towns. And they'd call up and they would say, you know, we're interested in Towns. And Wolves would be like, cool. Yeah, all right. Nice. So make us an offer. And nothing tangible ever really amounted from it. And I had heard that they were kind of playing the same game, and I'm checking in on it. And you know, the conversation I had was like, yeah, they're playing the Towns game again. And I'm like, okay, you know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 18 times, you know, I'm going to dinner. And then like not long later, the trade happens. And I'm like, what the hell? And the difference was the Knicks decided, screw it, we'll throw DiVincenzo in. And the Wolves love DiVincenzo. They've loved DiVincenzo for a long time. They came really close to signing him during free agency the year the Knicks signed him. It was really close. He was, you know, they were his number 2 choice. And I think it wasn't like a number 2 because I got to choose a second choice. Like he really gave them actual consideration there before choosing the Knicks eventually. And the Wolves really wanted him. They're really into DiVincenzo. And after seeing the season he had last year, they're even more into it. You know, the way that we've talked about DiVincenzo and Josh Hart coming off the bench and how those guys could be the best 1-2 punch off the bench in the league. Well, I think the Wolves now have the best 1-2 punch in the league.
Absolutely.
Because they got the reigning 6th man of the year. And there's an argument that, and to be clear, I didn't have a vote last year, but if I did, I would have voted for Naz Reid for 6th man of the year. Like, I think he's the deserving 6th man of the year. And they got the reigning 6th man of the year. And you can make a really good argument that he is not their best bench player. That Dante DiVincenzo is a better player than Naz Reid. And that's not because I think anything less of Naz Reid than anybody should think of Naz Reid. He's a wonderful player, but so is Donte DiVincenzo. And they wanted DiVincenzo for a long time. And whatever changed, the Knicks, I think there was some more desperation in there because of the Mitchell Robinson situation. I think there was some more desperation in there because of just kind of like camp coming up and let's get this done. And they just, for whatever reason, decided to throw DiVincenzo into the deal. But they were not throwing DiVincenzo into the deal for a long time. Something changed last second on Friday night where they were like, screw it, let's do it.
So if we were to assemble the percentage pie of reasons why they made this trade, I am assuming based on the way that you wrote about their longtime pursuit of Towns, by far the biggest slice of the pie is that they just love Towns and they just wanted Towns and they wanted to be in the Karl-Anthony Towns business. Could you rank these next three for me? One being the fact that
it's also, by the way, can I cut you off for a sec? It's also like the Towns it's the Towns connections. Like, let's not forget, we're talking about the New York Knicks, right? Like, yes. Leon Rose was Karl-Anthony Towns' agent, and he's CAA client, and all the Knicks stuff. When we talk about the stars the Knicks were going to chase when Leon Rose took the deal, they were always the CAA guys. They were always Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker or, Joel Embiid is not a CAA guy, but he was represented by Leon Rose. Now he's represented by WME now that Leon Rose is with the Knicks, and Karl-Anthony Towns was represented by Leon Rose. And so when we throw those names out there, and we've been throwing those same names out there for so many years, like there's a reason why. So it's also the emotional connections. It's also like the Knicks Kentucky connection, which only grows with Worldwide West there, who, has his Kentucky connections. And you're trading one Kentucky guy for another Kentucky guy. You're trading one CAA guy for another CAA guy. And it's like, I think that obviously plays a factor as well. It's not just that they think Karl-Anthony Towns, obviously they think he's a great player, but it's so much more than that.
Of course. And that's all in that piece of the pie. I'm curious about the other pieces. So uncertainty, let's call it uncertainty at the center position. The Julius Randle contract situation. And then I'll throw in there, although I'm pretty sure it's going to be last by far, if it even gets a percentage at all. Maybe some qualms about Donte DiVincenzo not like being potentially. I don't want to step on anybody's words, but like I know Ian reported today, like, or no, sorry, it was Steph Bondi reported, like, according to a source, like Donte DiVincenzo, I forget what he said, but like basically intimating like he wasn't, sound like he was unhappy, he was excited to play with this team. So I don't want to say anything out of turn, but like concerns that might become an issue. Let's say that.
You mean Donte coming off the bench?
Yeah, and like again, not enough. Not only one ball, not enough minutes, not enough shots, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I would say number one is unquestionably they wanted Karl-Anthony Towns. Number two is that they knew they needed a center. They needed to fill that spot. They are thinking the same stuff about Mitchell Robinson that we've said in this podcast. They're just not certain what they're going to get out of him for health reasons. And they know they need a big, like people talk about rim protection and all that. They were going to struggle as a rebounding team, man. Like Josh Hart can't do it all on his own. OG Anunoby, for as good and physical of a defender as OG Anunoby is, he's not a great rebounding 3, let alone rebounding 4. Like you're gonna struggle on the boards with that previous lineup, and Towns is gonna help with that a whole bunch. And they knew they needed a center, and I don't know if it had to be Towns, but like they were calling around the league and putting in calls for centers for sure. And then they ended up gravitating to Towns when they felt like, oh, is this actually going to happen? And they end up actually going to Towns. I would say number 3 is the uncertainty of Randle's contract situation. I think that certainly played a part in it. I don't think it played a massive part in it just because there was nothing really new there. I wrote a pretty deep diving story into Randle's contract extension right before he became eligible for the contract at the beginning of August, and kind of wrote about how it's really difficult to find an extension that makes sense for both sides. And I was very pessimistic just based on the math that they were going to be able to work out some sort of extension. And it just never progressed. I didn't think it was ever going to happen. And I don't think they ever thought it was going to happen. And I don't think Randle's people ever thought no, because it just doesn't make sense with the math,
Happen now. We should be very clear. Happen this summer.
Correct. Oh, yeah. I don't think they would have re-signed Randle or something.
I just want to make that clear to our listeners.
Yeah, giving Julius Randle 140% of his salary for next season in an extension would have just been basically undoing the financial favor that Jalen Brunson did for them. And that's just like, it just would have been, financially irresponsible to do that when you don't need to. And the Knicks weren't going to do that. And I laid that out in that story for the most part. And even knowing all of that, like, they weren't shopping Julius Randle all summer. Like, I said it a million times throughout the summer. Like, the Knicks are showing no indications that they're trying to trade Julius Randle. They were trying to trade for Karl-Anthony Towns. And so when you trade for Karl-Anthony Towns, not only do you need to give up stuff, especially after you've already traded all of your unprotected first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, not only do you need to give up talent, you also need to find a way to make the money work. And including Julius Randle's money in that deal was basically the only way you were going to be able to get that done, even from a financial standpoint. So it was a part, but I wouldn't say it was a huge part, because nothing that happened with Julius Randle's contract situation was a surprise, I don't think, to anybody involved. And then, I don't really think nobody told me they had concerns about Dante coming off the bench. I'll tell you that much.
I just wanted to ask the question. That's what I thought you'd answer, but I just wanted to ask.
I mean, I'll give a little more context on this. So I do know that, like, the beginning of last year, Dante's coming off the bench and Quentin Grimes is starting, right? And I think DiVincenzo was a little frustrated in that situation. I don't think he was totally thrilled that he was coming off the bench behind Quentin Grimes. Now,
I wonder why.
I never came out and reported like Dante DiVincenzo is disgruntled that he's coming off the bench behind Quentin Grimes. And the reason why is because there's a difference between being competitive and ambitious, and then the other side, like, causing problems. And you want to talk about guys who are unhappy that they're not in the starting lineup? You know who's unhappy that he's not in the starting lineup? Literally every NBA player not in the starting lineup. They're all unhappy they're not in the starting lineup. They're all confident. They all believe in themselves. That's how they got to the league.
Yeah.
And guess what? Dante is a deserving starter.
Yes, he is.
He is clearly a starting caliber player.
He's one of the 100 best players in the league. And there's 150 starters. So
yes, it is not unreasonable for him to think of himself as a starter. In my estimation of Dante DiVincenzo, and from my experience of watching him last year and talking to people about this when he wasn't thrilled about coming off the bench last year, it's not like that manifested in him being like, well, screw Quentin Grimes, or, well, screw this team, I'm not happy, or anything like that. All that happened was it lit a little bit of a fire under him. And he was like, I really want to win this starting spot. Like, I'm going to work my ass off. I want to win this starting spot. Isn't that good?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that what you want? Like, isn't that, he didn't become a bad teammate to Quentin Grimes. Like, isn't that what you want? Isn't that good culture? And so I never reported on it because it could so easily be misconstrued. And to me, it's not proper. It's not a proper way to tell that story. And no one ever said to me that they thought it would be some sort of problem that DiVincenzo was upset coming off the bench. Let's say that there is a world where he was really upset that he was coming off the bench. Okay. I just don't see him as the type of teammate who's going to be like, okay, well, now it's a problem for the whole team. You can't make everybody happy. I bet you Drew Holiday was not thrilled that he had to stand in the corner for a lot of last year. I bet you. But Drew Holiday, if you ask anyone who's ever been teammates with him, is just one of the most beloved teammates in the history of the NBA. And he caused no problems. And what did he do? He played the role that he was asked to play. And it helped his team win a championship. And he's getting a lot of glory from it and a lot of praise, as he should. But he took a backseat role. And he probably was like, he probably was like, I'm a borderline Hall of Famer. Like, I can do more than this. I can do more than this. Maybe it's different with Drew Holiday because he's already proven he can do more than that on literally a title winning squad. Too. And he got paid. And Dante is on a team friendly contract, and he's still proving himself. And I've talked to him about that need to prove himself and that kind of stuff. And he says like he doesn't feel like he has to prove anything to anyone, and that's something that he has learned. Like when he first came in the league, he felt like he needed to prove stuff to people, and he doesn't feel that way. But I also, in getting to know him, know that he's just a tremendously competitive person. And you set goals for yourself as a tremendously competitive person. And I think if he came into this year, not as a starter and as a member of the Knicks, I think he probably would have been like, all right, I'm going to show everybody why I should be a starter. But I don't think the way that he would do that would be to like all of a sudden like unfriend Mikal Bridges. I think he would probably just start showing up earlier to practices, you know? And I don't see that as anything near a problem. That's my analysis of the situation. And again, I haven't even heard that no one has told me that he was upset in any capacity, but I wouldn't blame him if he was. Like, he's your competitor. Like, yeah, he should come in a little pissed and be like, yeah, you know what, Mikal, you're my guy, and I'm going to take your starting spot right now. That's what we're going to do here. You know, like that's the way it should be. Even Josh Hart was talking today at media day. Like he kind of joked about it, but he was being serious about like Bridges and Anunoby and Hart are all. I was asking about how they're going to switch. They're going to switch more this year than they ever have under Thibs. I was asking about how they're going to switch more, and even Josh Hart was like being like, yeah, you know, like sometimes I'll get like, no, I can stick with this guy. Like, I'm not giving him to you. Like, I got this guy. I'm going to try to go over the screen. Like, I'm not giving him to Mikal. Like, I got this guy. And then I was even able to ask Bridges today about like, how are you going to handle the fact that Josh is going to be I forget how I said it, about how Josh is going to start to get really pissed about you getting all the better defensive assignments. And Bridges laughed about it and gave an answer as if it was like a reality. Like, guys these are elite world-class competitors. This is their psychology. This is why they become as successful as they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in my opinion, there's actually something right with that. It's the way it should be. And it's why they become that successful.
That's great. That was good. Thanks for that. Okay, we're going rapid fire. 5 questions that we're getting out of here. We don't do usually rapid fire with you, but we're gonna actually do rapid fire.
Okay, we're gonna try.
5 questions. Number 1, what would have been the Knicks opening night starting lineup if they did not make this trade? Assuming Julius Randle was healthy.
Precious at the 5.
Precious at the 5. Okay, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, that's my guess. That's a guess. I don't know, but that's a guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not holding your feet to the fire. Just we're just shooting the shit. Shooting the shit. Question number 2. What is going to be the Knicks opening night starting lineup currently?
Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, Karl-Anthony Towns.
Okay. Question number 3. Who will get off assuming a normal game, who's going to get off the bench for the Knicks in game 1 and play minutes?
I love that. It's kind of tough, right?
Yeah.
Because you know it's going to be McBride and you know it's going to be Precious.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of looking at Landry Shamet.
Wow. And I'm like, didn't think you were going there. Tell me more.
I'm like,
Tell me more, Mr. Katz.
I'm just like, is it going to be you, Landry Shamet? You know it's going to be McBride and you know it's going to be Precious. And you're looking around and you're like, it's a lot of wings and a lot of point guards. And
I'm excited for Kolek. I'll tell you that.
I don't know if it's going to be Kolek. I think we're going to see Campaign before we see Kolek.
You are? Okay. There you go. Well, that's something.
I think we'll see Campaign before we see unless Kolek comes out in the preseason and he's like just gangbusters. Then maybe it's Kolek. Then maybe it's a Quickly situation like where Quickly just overtook like Austin Rivers. But I think we'll see. I think like at least opening night in the preseason, like Campaign will have that. We'll have that spot, and then
he's going to get the first shot.
And then I guess Jericho. I mean, it's going to be either Jericho Sims or Landry Shamet. Am I forgetting someone? Am I losing my mind?
No, you're not forgetting.
No, I didn't think so. Yeah, so like that's why I'm looking at like it's not going to be Dottier. I don't think it's going to be Kolek.
Okay. Marcus Morris, we don't know if he's going to be on the team. But this leads perfectly to my next question.
Marcus Morris is not going to be on the team.
Well,
I don't know how they would make that work because he got waived. And
that's right. He can't be on the team because they can't afford him. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
They gotta like convert. They either got to sign an undrafted guy or they got to like convert Hook Porty or something.
That's a bad job by me.
Yeah. Yeah, because they got to do all those sign and trades in order to make the town stuff work. They gotta really do some the cap gymnastics for this trade. By the way, people don't even realize how insane they are.
Well, we're different podcast for a different day.
They are insane.
The fact that you struggled to answer that last question leads me to my next question. The next minute of NBA basketball, Mitchell Robinson plays. Will he be wearing a Knicks uniform? Yes or no?
Yes. Just because if you say January return, like I think there's a better chance that you trade him when he's on the court. And he maybe has at least a little bit of value because he's at least on the court. January return gives him a month, at least a couple of weeks maybe, to do something before the trade deadline. So I'll say yes.
Okay. And then last but not least, since I don't know if I'm going to talk to you again before the season starts, give me a win total.
$53.
Oh, you went higher there at the last second.
53. I was going to say 2.
I know you, so I heard you.
And then I went 53. I said 53 before the trade. And then I said 53 when we thought Mitchell Robinson when we didn't realize he was going to be out for as long as he was. And then Robinson got hurt and then they made the trade. And I'm still going to stick it with 53 because I think there will be some sort of a learning curve. There's going to be a portion where OG Anunoby gets hurt. And look, like we just ran through it. Isn't it amazing that they made what's essentially a 2-for-1 trade, 2 rotation players for 1, and yet their greatest strength, arguably, which was depth, is now like totally gone. Like now they're so shallow. And it seemed before that they were so deep. And it wasn't even like just that their top 8 was good. It was like Campaign is a vet who gets playing time on teams, and he's a 3rd string point guard who's out of your rotation, and Kolek's your 4th string point guard, and he looks like he might become a decent player, and you're running through it. And it's like, oh, well, Shamet might be the 12th guy. Jericho Sims might be the 12th or 13th guy. Like you're in good shape. Now we're talking about those guys as potential rotation players. Like one of those guys, that's why I'm looking at Landry Shamet, where I'm like, it's a bunch of bigs and point guards. And it's like, if you're playing McBride and you're playing Payne off the bench, are you really going to play Cole? You're going to play one of Payne or Kolek. You're not going to play both those guys and McBride, right? You're just not.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to like Deuce and Precious or Givens. So as you've I don't know if you say reported, but as you've said many times at the very least, they view Deuce McBride as a small wing. They don't view him as a backup point guard. And so pick one of Payne and Kolek. So let's call that the 8th man. If Shamet is the 9th guy, then the only thing is that leaves you pretty small. You know?
Yeah, it leaves you real small. But if Sims is the 8th guy, then you're
9th guy.
Like
9th guy.
Ninth guy. Sorry.
Whatever.
Sims is the last guy. If you're you're going to have to play like a Sims, Achua front court at times. Like I don't like that.
I don't
That's
love it
rough. Like at least Shamet can shoot it.
Well, is there a way to configure it where the Shamet minutes? I don't know. Maybe the Shamet minutes don't have to be with both McBride and the other point guard. Maybe they could, screw around. Although that's tough. I don't know.
Can I say the craziest thing ever, which I don't think is actually going to happen, but I'm just going to say it.
What?
I think it's more interesting than it is like good basketball strategy. Like give me this scale of 1 to 10. I think everybody agrees. You asked me who the starters were going to be, and I said who the starters were. And I think everyone agrees those are the starters. Scale of 1 to 10. How crazy would it be to start Precious instead of Josh Hart?
Before the conversation had kind of coalesced around, well, this is just going to be the starting five. The night of the trade, when we were talking about it on the live stream, that definitely got floated, and I don't think it's insane. That Thibs would look at that and be like, you know what? Let's start with this. We will be the biggest team in the league. We'll have 4 shooters on the floor, and Precious could just go and do the dirty work and roll into space, and he could switch. And it's like you give yourself that much more juice off the bench with both Josh Hart and Deuce McBride. It's I also on a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy is it? I mean, 5, I don't know, but 4, 5, 6, something like that. I not to 10 or 9 or 8 or like anything like that.
Yeah, because if you're going to play Jericho Sims in the rotation, which maybe they will, maybe Sims is just in the rotation.
I'd be surprised.
I mean, maybe the way to do it is like Sims comes in for Precious at 6 minutes or something. And that way you separate them. They're next to Towns. And then Sims runs as like the second unit center. But it's okay. So who do you think it is? So it's you got Precious either off the bench. You got Precious off the bench. It's not going to happen. But you got Precious.
You don't think it's going to happen?
I think it's an interesting concept, but I think it stops there. Like ultimately, like Josh Hart is just a much better player than Precious Achiuwa.
Well, obvious. No one's disputing. I'm not disputing that, but it didn't seem like I was disputing that. No,
you didn't. I mean, I just think I don't know. Thibs also started Keith Bogans and played him 15 minutes a game for a whole season. So, maybe he'll do it. Let's say, okay, but whatever else, we know what the top 7 is. The top 7 is the starters, let's say, whether with Josh Hart or Precious, and that's either Hart or Precious off the bench. And then McBride, obviously, is off the bench. And then who is the 7 and 8 and 9? Or sorry, 8 and 9 that makes the most sense there? Because you're gonna, no matter who I say there, whether we say Shamet, you can come back at me and be like, well, then you're really small. We could say Sims, and you're gonna be like, well, then you're scrunched. We could say Kolek, and we could be like, well, he's a rookie. You don't know what you're getting. You could say Campaign and be like, well, it's just like, is he redundant? Like,
hold on. We could logic this. Who played the entire fourth quarter last year? Or sorry, the entire first quarter and third quarter usually. Which starter? Which point producing Knick?
Jalen Brunson.
Yes. Is there any reason to believe that will change? I mean, it could, but like it
probably not. I think they probably stagger Towns to play with the second unit.
You stole my next question. So that means Karl-Anthony Towns goes to the bench with 7 minutes into the game, 8 minutes into the game. And then when Jalen Brunson takes a breather at the beginning of the second quarter, Karl-Anthony Towns comes in. So now, right off the bat, you are operating with Towns. Precious came in for Towns at the, 5-minute mark of the first quarter. You could leave, and you probably will leave Precious in there. So now you have Towns and Precious. That's big. That's a lot of size. So if ever there was an opportunity to play Landry Shamet effectively as your 3, Wouldn't that be it?
Maybe. You're certainly not playing Jericho Sims.
Yeah, I don't see the world because I don't see how Sims gets into this. I mean, look, who knows what could happen? Obviously, injuries happen, all that kind of stuff. But if it goes that way, where Brunson plays the first quarters and then Cat comes in at the top of the second to support, where's Sims getting the minutes?
No, I think you're right. And so I think you're probably playing Shamet, and then you're playing either Kolek or Payne.
That's fucking nuts.
I mean, I think I also am pretty confident they're keeping. Like, I think they've already decided they're keeping Shamet.
Well, they didn't waive him. They could waive they waived Morris.
Yeah. I think they've already decided that they're gonna, like, he's gonna make the team, but he's still on non-guarantee. So I think they've already decided he's gonna make the team, and then you see. But I think he could.
That's a feisty. Hold on, let's say this out loud. Deuce McBride, campaign, Landry Shamet.
It's a weird second unit. That's a weird lineup, dude.
Funky as all hell.
That is a weird lineup.
Yeah. Damn.
You know what it feels like?
What?
Feels like there's something else. Like something else is going to come.
I didn't ask
lineup,
you.
That is a weird. It's a weird second unit.
I didn't ask
such
you
a weird
whether
second unit. Like forget about talent level and what's deep and what's not deep and all that.
It's
like
just,
stylistically, that is just weird.
It's just funky.
I mean, maybe Thibs finds a way to stagger OG with the second unit too. And like he could stagger two guys with the second unit and just always have two starters on the floor.
I mean, if you take OG and Cat out at the same time, and then you just reinsert them both in at the top of the second.
You could put in Precious and McBride or something.
Well, so you're really going jumbo because now you're leaving Precious in, so now you're getting OG at the 3, with backup units, right?
Yeah,
because okay. So now we have, let's hold on. We're almost done. I promise. So we got Cat at the 5. We got Precious at the 4 or whatever.
At the 4.
Precious at the 5.
OG at the 3.
Yeah. Shamet at the
2, and then 2. Payne at the 1. And you just stagger, and like you're not going to play that lineup a ton of minutes together also because you're configuring your lineups differently if you're going with 2 starters to play with the bench unit or 2 starters on the court at the all time.
Yeah, no.
Andrew's putting in the comments that I missed where Deuce is.
No, so it's Deuce and either Payne or Shamet.
Yeah, well, that's what if you're playing 8 guys.
Well, I was about to say in this scenario, this sounds more like an 8-man rotation. Maybe give or take a minute or something here, but
maybe that's what they do with an 8-man. But like you
maybe
can,
that is.
You can do, but I don't think they'll play that in the regular season. You can do a 9-man and still have 2 starters on the floor. You're just going to have to play around with your rotations a little bit more.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to sub 2 guys out at the 6-minute mark instead of 1 guy out at the 6-minute mark. So you go at the 6-minute mark of the first quarter, you go Precious and Deuce in for OG and Cat. And then you play Brunson, Deuce, Bridges,
McCall, Josh Hart,
and Precious, and that's a real lineup.
Yeah, sure it is.
That's a real lineup. That makes sense. That's a real lineup. That lineup could play really well together. They could play really fast and they can shoot, and that lineup could play really well together. They got defenders out there like that lineup. I could see that lineup being good. And then you just go off of that and you ease the bench in from there. And eventually when you sub Cat back in at 2-minute mark in the first quarter, you're also subbing OG back in.
Yeah. Well,
and that's the way you could do it too.
They have options. We can say that. For as much as they have their depth has suffered, they have options.
And for what it's worth, I could see Thibs finding it strategically advantageous to pair Cat and OG together defensively
at all times, basically.
Where OG is such a good low man, such a good helper from the weak side, so good off the ball that if you can just get Towns to be physical down low, OG can come over and help. He can take over a lot of those paint responsibilities. He can cut off an entire side of the floor so that you just can't pass it there. Like you can make that work. I could see Thibs finding that advantageous. So you can do that. You just got to basically pair Katz minutes with OGs and stagger them both with the second unit.
It was funny when you said Katz. I thought you were referring to yourself for a second.
Yes. Stagger my minutes. I would definitely stagger my minutes with OG. I'm a complete defensive liability.
as much as Cat.
If I covered myself, I would just destroy myself. Like I would just, the things I would write, so reliant on the mid-range game, exclusively fake hustle, will only die for a ball when it's clearly going out of bounds. Like just the worst type of player.
Don't sell yourself short, Fred. Fred Katz, you are a legend among men. I'm happy we got to do this. I don't know if I said this already, but this will not be the last time you hear Fred Katz on this podcast. He will not be on as frequently as he was on last year, but or in the past few years. But we're still going to have him on. He's still going to grace us with his presence. And yeah, I mean, the only regret that I have is that we didn't get more Pistons talk, any Pistons talk in this episode. But we'll make up for that next time when you do a feature on. What?
Isn't it great that James Edwards is replacing me?
It's just you can't write it.
I just spent an entire season talking about the Pistons, and then I got replaced by the only media member who talked about the Pistons more than me. It's perfect.
And we look forward to having James Edwards on this podcast, which I know that's going to happen at some point relatively soon. So we're excited for that. We're excited for the season. I'm excited to read you and all that you come up with and all of the, fun stories that you write, the more serious stories that you write, and just everything, because you're the best at what you do. And it's been a fun couple of years. And the fun will continue in different form.
That's what she said.